Hello everyone, and welcome to another mini sky tonight. So a while back I did a video that discussed about some of the mind-blowing facts about space, some of the cool things that people have difficulty wrapping their minds around. So today I wanted to look at something a little bit different. Some supposed facts that people have passed around through social media and from one person to the other person and so on. But in actuality, they're myths. They're not true. They're based upon people trying to understand what's going on in the sky with no evidence to back it up, or trying to comprehend something just based upon pure observation. So today I wanted to talk about my 7 top myths and to debunk them right here. So let's dive into it. So myth number 1, there's a dark side of the moon. Now, this concept has been immortalized by the rock group Pink Floyd with their album, The Dark Side of the Moon. And it's understandable how people can comprehend this idea that, oh, we only see one side of the moon, so the other physical side of the moon is either actually darker in color, or more commonly, many people think that, oh, there's always one side of the moon that always faces space, so therefore it never receives light. So to bust one of those sides of the story, that the dark side of the moon or the back side of the moon is completely physically dark. So in this image right here, I have both sides of the moon. The image on the left is the side that we see. So you can see these dark areas that are known as Maria, which are Latin for the term seas, and you can see the obligatory man in the moon. So this is the image on the left is the one that we always see. The image on the right, however, is the back side of the moon, or the side of the moon we don't see. As you can see, it is much lighter in color than the side that we usually do see. So this kind of busts the myth wide open that there's an actually physical dark side of the moon. Like it's actually darker in color. So why is it we don't see the backside or the far side of the moon? It has to deal with the moon's rotation. The moon is in what is known as a tidally locked rotation, meaning it rotates at the same rate that it goes around the Earth. So as the moon orbits the Earth, it rotates at the same rate to where we always see one side of the moon always face us. So the image on the left is the side that we always see, and it always faces us. So the idea that there's always one side of the moon that always faces towards space that doesn't receive light is understandable, but that's not quite true. And here's why. If we bring the sun into perspective, so like here I have this lamp right here, and if my fingers represent the side of the moon that we constantly see, eventually it's going to rotate towards me and be in between the sun and the Earth. And so during that time, the back side of the moon will receive light. Whereas if the moon is back behind the Earth, eventually it will start to receive light, so the far side of the moon will not receive light. So half of the time it receives light and half of the time it doesn't. In fact, one day on the moon is 29.5 days. And that's based upon the orbit of the moon and its rotation, because they're kind of in sync with one another because it's tidally locked. So to go for the sun to appear on the moon back to where it was, so go from noon on the moon to noon again, would take 29.5 days. In fact, we get our old term month from the Old English word moonth, meaning the cycle of the moon. So now you know. So there are certain parts of the time where the backside of the moon receives light, and there are certain times where it doesn't. So there's no physical dark side of the moon on both cases. Myth number 2, you can't see the moon during the day. That's actually not true. Depending upon where the moon is in its orbit, as you can see in this image, during the day, you can start to see the moon rise during the day. So this image was taken roughly around about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock during the day, not close to sunset, but there's the moon right there. The sun is shining, there's beautiful light during the day, and the moon is right up in the sky. So it is possible you can see the moon during the day, depending upon its phase. And speaking of phases, this is a common myth I often hear. The phases of the moon are created by the Earth's shadow. This is not true at all. The only time that a phase of the moon is created when the Earth's shadow hits the moon is during an event known as a lunar eclipse. And these are relatively rare compared to the cycles of the moon that happen every month. In fact, I can leave a link up here that explains the 2 different types of eclipses that we have and the difference between the 2. So the phases of the moon are actually created by the moon's position with respect to the Earth. So given the moon's position and where it's located in its orbit with respect to us here on Earth, it does receive certain amounts of light. And the way we can see it shows how much of the moon is lit versus how much it's not. And given its position in its orbit, we can see part of it lit, part of it not. Or we see all of it illuminated, but the backside we can't see. Or the part of it that is illuminated is on the far side of the moon and we can't see it at all. So depending upon where the moon is located in its orbit, you get to see the phases or the shadow and light sides of the moon. Or as I like to call it, the day and night sides of the moon. You basically get to see where daytime is on the moon and where nighttime is on the moon. And the same thing can be seen in reverse too. If you were standing on the moon, you can see the daytime and nighttime sides of the Earth. So many people can look at this image and thinking, oh, like that Earth right in the middle of the diagram right there, that means the moon is behind the Earth. So therefore, the Earth's shadow should be casted onto the moon. That means we shouldn't see it. Or we should get a lunar eclipse every month. There's a little bit of a caveat there. As I kind of explained in my video talking about eclipses, the moon is on a 5-degree tilt above and below the plane that the orbits of the planets go on. So since it goes a little bit above and a little bit below the orbit of the Earth, there are times where the moon is so high in the sky above the plane of Earth's orbit that the light of the sun still hits the moon, but Earth's shadow does not hit it at all. So in a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse, those 2 eclipses can only occur when the path of the moon and the path of the Earth are in a line with the sun. And those happen on the nodes. And those are a little bit tricky to get an exact alignment. But fortunately, it's able to calculate when those do occur. And you can check out NASA's website on eclipses to find out when the next eclipse will occur. In fact, I think here for San Antonio, the next major eclipse happens on May 25th, and it's a lunar eclipse that happens early in the morning. So mark your calendars. Myth number 4, Polaris is the brightest star in the night sky. This is a common myth. I have many people spouting off to me when I'm in the planetarium. It's actually not true. And allow me to demonstrate by showing you this lovely diagram. So here in this beautiful screenshot right here of the north sky, the North Star is visible. So with the idea that the North Star is the brightest star, which one do you think it is? I asked about 15 to 20 people to kind of refer back to me, and they looked at this and they said, oh, given those 20 people, they say one of these 4 stars is the brightest star in that area. And I can see that, but those stars are not the North Star. The North Star is actually right here, Polaris. Far away from the brightest star in the field there, you can see. And just to give you a rough idea, again, just to go back, compare to all the stars. But let's take a look at this field of view. Which star do you think is the brightest? Many people, of the 20 people I did survey, they said, yeah, that one is the brightest. And they are right. That is the brightest star. In fact, it is the brightest star in the nighttime sky. Of all the stars in the nighttime sky, this one is called Sirius. And you can see it only in the wintertime. So therefore, when you're looking at other stars, don't think Polaris is the brightest star. So if you did try to follow the brightest star in the nighttime sky, you could get lost. Myth number 5. The Big Dipper is a constellation. Now, I know for me, this one I'm kind of a little bit loose with, but the Big Dipper is what is known as an asterism, or a nickname for a group of stars. Now, many people think that, oh, the Big Dipper is a constellation because it's a constellation that they can easily visibly see. And it's understandable. I prefer to call it the Big Dipper myself because it's much more easy to comprehend and to see visually than the whole constellation itself, especially since many of the stars in the whole constellation are very faint to see in the city lights, whereas in many of the stars in the Big Dipper are relatively bright. So this is what the bigger constellation looks like, where the top left portion of the constellation there is what we refer to as the Big Dipper. So as you can see, I have a difficult time seeing a quote unquote bear out of this. So I like to refer to it as the Big Dipper too. But just note it's an asterism though. Myth number 6, Galileo created the first telescope. That's actually not true. He heard record of this device being built by somebody else and was the first person to take the telescope that he created and pointed it up at the sky. Back in the day, it was first called a spyglass. And the gentleman who created it was Hans Lippershey. He took a series of lenses and put them in this long metallic tube as a means for naval navigation. He wanted to be able to see on the horizon to look for ships as well as other storms on the horizon. So he did it as a means of looking around the Earth. Galileo heard of records of this device being built and built his own, which as you can see in this image right here. And he was the first person to take it and point it up at the stars. And by doing that, he was able to explore new ideas of our universe. So sometimes taking an instrument that's used for one thing and modifying it for another use can be beneficial. And last but not least, myth number 7, Mercury is the hottest planet in the solar system. And this myth is understandable because many people think, oh, Mercury, since it's so close to the sun, it's really, really, really hot, which is indeed true, but it's only hot half of the time. And allow me to explain. Mercury doesn't have much of an atmosphere, so it doesn't retain heat. So on the daytime side, it's over 800 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's really, really hot. On the nighttime side, however, the side that faces away from the sun, is negative 290 degrees Fahrenheit. It is really cold. I sometimes like to nickname Mercury the fire and ice planet. Whereas in Venus, however, takes the title of hottest planet in the solar system. And that's because Venus has such a thick atmosphere that it retains heat very well. And it has a temperature of over 900 degrees Fahrenheit day and night. So it's really, really hot on Venus. So these are 7 myths that I've heard make the rounds through different means. If there's a myth that you know that's indeed a wacky myth that has been posted on social media or anything, leave it down in the comments below and maybe I could do a commenters edition of this myth busting sort of thing. If there's a topic or a question that you would love for me to cover over, leave it down in the comments as well. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, never stop learning.